Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 Global DEI Conference, a transformative platform for diversity, equity, inclusion, presented by Ludo and powered here on the One Business World Network. Thank you for joining us for a dynamic convergence of global thought leaders and change makers as we foster equity and shape the future together. Our next segment, we're very happy to welcome to the platform Greg Ryder. He is the Director of Corporate Compliance at Emblem Health. He's joining us today from Lower Manhattan, and his topic is embracing the present, celebrating diversity, stay authentic, and share your story. Good afternoon, Greg. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Glenn. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Let me hand it off over to you.
Great. So happy to be here. Looking forward to just sharing the next 20 minutes or so with you. So I'm going to be looking at a couple of topics, sort of centrally focused on my journey and the concept of embracing the present, which is from a book, Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, which a lot of folks may be familiar with. And it's the idea of how do we own our stories? How do we stay present? How do we embrace the now? So I'll be sharing some things about that and applying it to my own journey. I'm going to look a little bit at sort of embracing not just the D in the acronym DEIB, look a little bit at how we can stay authentic by examining our individual values and competencies, and of course, applying that to myself, looking at the value of sharing our stories, and then just sort of encouraging you to make sure that we all take some time to sort of think through what we're learning, not just in my session, but in all of the sessions throughout this conference. So on our next slide, I sort of thought I'd start by sort of looking at sort of a partial list of my jobs, because I would imagine, like many of us, our journey of being authentic and what I call embracing the now, or in the terms of Jay Shetty, our Dharma, which really is our competencies, our value, our passion, our skills, and our expertise. That doesn't come instantly. You know, I don't know that many of us sort of come out of the womb and already just like I'm in the present, I'm in the moment, I fully know who I am. I know how I can, be a force for good. It takes a while for us to sort of find that groove, if you will. And some of us, it may take many experiences, many jobs before we get there. So I was just sort of looking back at my own journey, and it was sort of interesting to sort of see the list of all the different jobs that I've had, starting with my very first one as a paper boy. And then through high school, I worked as a produce clerk cashier. When I went to college, I worked in the college media center on a work study program. And then when I first moved to Atlanta from Pennsylvania, I worked as a bank teller. And you know what? That wasn't a very good fit. I think I lasted a few months and I was fired. It turned out that you're not being able to balance your cash drawer several times a week was not really sort of the ideal qualification for being a bank teller. So that didn't work out. I worked as a church foreign missions office. I worked as a summer camp counselor. I worked for AT&T as a collections associate, a number of jobs at AT&T, compliance training associate. I had a number of temp positions. And I worked as a waiter and as a restaurant host. And being a waiter was also another job that I got fired at. As it turned out, I was much better as a host. I was great in greeting people and being able to seat them and make sure that I evenly dispersed the restaurant guests across all the waiter stations. But trying to keep track of people's orders and making sure I was there to get the food when it came out, it was not a good fit. So I just share that as part of my journey, that, I can look back now and say that, that was all part of my journey. It was part of my experience. I try not to have any shame or say, well, I was a bad person because I had all those different jobs. It was part of my being able to determine what I was good at, what I was not good at. And I think for any number of us that have gone through a lot of jobs, one of the things that I think is a value to that is that we're not afraid to try something new. We're not afraid to sort of say, you know what, that didn't work. Maybe after whatever works for us is for the appropriate period of time to sort of dwell on that and own that and more, sort of, I don't want to say grieve, but just sort of live with maybe the uncomfortable feelings of that, we can move on. So those are part of my background. And then as far as a personal journey, as my next slide will show, um, you know, key to many of us that identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender is coming to what we call coming out. It's realizing that, I'm not sort of what the predominant culture assumes, unless you say otherwise, is, straight, identifies heterosexual. And by the way, my pronouns are he and his. So that's part of my journey as well. And I met this sort of milestone with a lot of trepidation and fear. I wasn't sure how people would react. My parents were not thrilled, but through time have learned to embrace me and to love me fully for who I am. But it was a milestone. It was a bit nerve-wracking. But I think and again, I'm just speaking for myself, being able to say, I'm not this is fully who I am, and knowing that my gender identity, sexual orientation was something that I believe was part of me from the very beginning. I did not wake up one day and say, oh, I think I will be gay. How many of you, if you identify as heterosexual, can you say that there was a day that you woke up and say, oh, I think today, moving forward, I will be straight? It doesn't, for many of us, that's really not how it works. So this was a freeing part of my journey. It was part of embracing the present. It's part of celebrating myself and staying authentic. And from that point forward to today, my life has been fully authentic and has brought me lots of opportunities, both professionally and personally, as this next slide will show, was just a few photos of highlights from my journey in the past several years. This next slide shows some photos of highlighting my story and my journey. And yes, so there I am in the top left corner with a lot of my colleagues at Emblem Health. This is a banner that was produced in honor of LGBTQ Pride Month back in 2019. And there I am, fully the compliance director, head of our LGBT employee resource group, and my colleagues. The next photo in the middle is one of my colleagues from ATD, which is the professional association of which I'm a part of, the Association for Talent Development. We're speaking at the international conference that is held every year. Anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 people attend this conference. The next photo, I don't have kids, but I do have pets, and these are our two kids, as I call them, KIDZ, Lucian and Nina. On the bottom, you see a big picture of lots of guys, and in the center is, yes, that's the one and only Hugh Jackman. I'm a member of the New York City Gay Men's Chorus. Embracing who I am, we got to sing backup for Hugh Jackman during his tour in 2019. That's us backstage with him at Madison Square Garden. I don't know that one of the top thrilling moments of my life was being on stage with him at Madison Square Garden with 50 of my colleagues at the Gay Men's Chorus, singing with him, surrounded by 14,000 people, singing You Are Not Alone, which is a song from the Broadway show, Dear Evan Hansen. Pretty exciting, pretty spine-tingling. The next photo is me and my husband. We were married 2 years ago, still doing COVID, at the Marriage Bureau office in New York City Hall, and there we are. So, this is my journey. This is my personal life. And I know that as opportunities arise, this fills out part of who I am. And not that I'm constantly throwing pictures at people's faces, but I don't need to be afraid like I first did before I came out. What if people see a picture of my husband or my boyfriend or my desk? What if they see a pride flag? And now, given there are unfortunately, some places in our world today where that would be very dangerous. Fortunately, for many of us, particularly here in New York, that's not an issue. So, sort of transitioning a bit from my personal, going back into concept from Think Like a Monk. Our next slide will sort of highlight a few of the key concepts that are part of this thinking of Think Like a Monk. I mentioned the idea of Dharma, passion, expertise, usefulness, job crafting. This is something that I realized was sort of part of my role a few years ago. Job crafting is that there may be times that rather than completely leaving our current occupation or job and looking for something else, we look to stay present and look for opportunities that can fit in with where we currently are. So for instance, presenting to you today is part of my Dharma. I can do this. I'm able to carve out time in my work schedule to do this and to be present and share with all of you. I've had 4 opportunities in this year alone to be part of conferences and present either virtually or in person. And I can do that while still being present as a director of corporate compliance and leading our employee resource group. And I've learned that all these things work together. So that's job crafting, looking to find opportunities of where you are and build your life and build your Dharma around all of that. Now, there are times that some of us will actually need to leave and need to make a move and transition to a different job, a different industry, a different country, a different state, a different city. But it really gave me a lot of relief, if you will, to realize, there's this option of staying put and being open to find opportunities to build a life where I'm at. So that's job crafting. Varna is another concept from Think Like a Monk that really has to do with talent. What are my talent? What are my competencies? What am I good at? What am I not so good at? And so part of, going through a lot of jobs, or maybe few jobs, we get to find out what clicks. What do I excel at? And that's all part of the process. And then everyday gratitude. Folks, it can come across sometimes as trite. We know that November, because of the US holiday of Thanksgiving, often is billed as Gratitude Month. But, being grateful for small and large things, I found releases energy that helps to bring about more good things. It helps me to be present, have a smile on my face, reach out to other people, look for collaboration, look for connection. It allows me to release shame that inhibits me from being the best version of myself in my professional life, in my personal life, in my community. And it just builds. Now, we're not perfect. And so there are moments when I'm not grateful. There are moments when I wish I was somewhere else. There may be moments when I wish I was someone other than who I am, that I was younger, more handsome, richer, et cetera, any of those things. But I think for me, the focus here is on consistently putting gratitude out into the universe and out into my life. An example of sort of this Dharma and everyday gratitude, on this next slide, will sort of illustrate this, particularly with my volunteer work with ATD, which is the Association for Talent Development. I started out serving on our local chapter, and this is true for all kinds of associations that some of us may be part of. And if you're not, then I would encourage you to get involved and find an association. There are lots of DEI related associations, but there may be one, particular to your job, your industry. So my local chapter, I was able to sort of give back. I was able to find ways to apply some of my skills and competencies outside of my paid work. That led to being part of the ATD International Conference and Expo. My first conference I attended was in 2002, and I've been attending regularly from that point forward. That led to certification. I would plug that as well. In addition to being part of an association, look for ways to be certified in your industry, in your skill set. Again, that sort of says I've met sort of some qualifications that show I know what I'm talking about. Listen to me. I can contribute to this project, to this discussion, to this meeting, to this community project, to the selected office, whatever the options are that you would want to pursue. That led to specifically focusing on speaking with ATD and healthcare related events, organizations. And then I think one of the highlights in my professional life, we saw one in my personal life with the New York City Gay Men's Chorus. And my professional life was being an editor, as the next slide will show, for ATD's Talent Development and Training and Healthcare Handbook that was published 2 years ago. This next slide will show that, will sort of give you a picture of that handbook. And that was an exciting opportunity. I got to be a published editor, that I got to work with a lot of colleagues across healthcare. And, that was a 2-year project. I got to sort of meet with other colleagues, other editors. I think we still need to move to the next slide, please, that shows the handbook, and put together this handbook, thank you, that's divided in sections and topics. And here, talk about Dharma. I knew that even though I'm good at communications and writing and editing, I knew that for me, the best fit for me in this project was to be a co-editor, not to be an actual writer of a chapter. Each chapter could be anywhere from 15 to 25 pages. I knew that that was just something that was not going to work for me. Being an editor was a much better fit. I got to organize and structure the book and then review other people's work and provide helpful feedback on to how to make that chapter better, how to make it flow with the overall structure of the book. This next slide will sort of add another element to how we can embrace the present, stay authentic, share our story. For me, as you can tell, I'm talking fast, I'm a little bit hyper animated. I need moments that are calm, so I can sort of gather my energy, not burn out, not go crazy, not overwhelm people. And so if you have something like that in your life, great. If not, I would look for tools, elements to bring mindfulness into play. One thing that works for me is I found this link on YouTube, which is like 2 hours of nothing but calm, meditative music and sea turtles swimming in the ocean. If I turn that on and I just sit there for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and let that play in the background, my heart rate goes down. I immediately calm down. I take a deep breath, and it helps me to sort of move forward with the things I need to do. So with that as a background, then I also want to look at, make sure, what are my values? I need to know what I'm good at, but what's important. And this again is a lifelong process. For me, I met with a career counselor a few years ago, and one thing that we looked at were, what are my values? What's important to me? If we're looking for another job, obviously we want to know what are the skills, what are the qualifications, what are my responsibilities, but what are the values? So for me, having to have those moments of determining what's important, I had to realize that that's as important as the qualifications, the skills, the responsibilities. There are various ways, various assessments. Talk with your colleagues, friends, and family. Your values can guide your decisions and help you at those milestones and those decision points on your path. Let's shift a bit and just look briefly at DEIB. So diversity is, we want to make sure that we're always seeking other people's input. If we're part of a project, if we're, for instance, I'm involved with healthcare, health equity, I may not be, I'm not an expert in transgender care. So if I'm going to be part of a project looking at how do we communicate, how do we transgender patients into our offices, I make sure that I've got someone that's transgender or has worked with transgender patients to be part of the experience. Who needs to be part of your project? Who do you need to talk to that's outside of your purview, that's outside of your identity, that's outside of your experience? What are we doing to include other voices in our work, in our associations, in our community, in our organizing, in our values work? Equity, how are we ensuring that everybody has an equal voice, has an equal opportunity? And that may take more work. That may be looking outside of what we would call our unconscious bias. But I think that feeds into our work. But on the next slide, when we look at my primary values, having diverse people provide you feedback about your own life, your values, your journey, ensures that you're getting the full picture of yourself and getting a full understanding of what is my story, what am I good at, what is my dharma. So for me, my primary values are gratitude, leadership, coaching, guiding, mentoring. Again, that's part of my job crafting. I'm getting to do this right now. I don't have to leave. I don't have to find another job. Connecting with others. When I'm at a conference, when I'm at an event, can I reach out? Can I be open to others coming to me? Can I look forward to getting a nugget of truth or experience from somebody else? Communicate. That's part of what I need to do. So for me, coming back to working within my office was important. Working from home was not something that really worked well for me. Trust. I need to ensure that there's a degree of trust among myself and my coworkers, the person that I'm reporting to. Service. This attitude, I'm just not in to do what's good for me. The work that I'm doing, I want to ensure I'm helping others. Hopefully, what I'm sharing with you today is helping you on your journey, will give you some insight, and maybe that in turn will help you to help others, and then emotional balance. This is really important for me. I want to make sure that I have opportunity to sort of balance. I don't want to be going go, 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 go. I need to make sure that there is, to some degree, a way to balance the busyness with the reflection. Next slide talks a little bit about what I call the concept of abundance. You know, openly sharing and collaborating with others is important, but I need to be able to do that without fear of losing out. I can be successful without having to take success away from somebody else. Someone else being successful doesn't mean that I have failed. It doesn't hurt me or my happiness to support other people, and to be happy in their happiness. That's hard. Sometimes when we see other people getting all the bells and whistles, getting all kinds of great things, being present, being grateful, being able to share in their success. And then the next slide, how can we share our stories? You know, how can we share our power, our impact, our humanness? Who am I? What are my stories? What do I have to offer? What do I need or want to learn? What can I ignore, let go, not worry about on my journey? We each have stories. We each have things to share. I would encourage us to have that as part of our career planning, our professional development, our looking for others. And then the next slide, which is the last slide, I would encourage all of us throughout today, throughout this conference, throughout other learning opportunities to pause and to say, well, what is resonating with me? What have I learned? What seems to really be sort of saying, oh, I need to address this. This is something I need to pursue. These are people I need to connect. Make sure that you have time for yourself. Sit over in the corner at a break. Go find a quiet corner, pull out your journal, your notebook, make some notes for yourself. What am I going to do with this information? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to reach out to? What can I take away from this? That's a lot of information. I hope it was helpful. Again, I only speak for myself and my journey, how to embrace the present, how to celebrate diversity of viewpoint, of people, of identities, of stories, of learnings in my life. How do I stay authentic to who I am? There's another quote that I want to end with, which is from Think Like a Monk. He says, you can't be anything you want, but you can be everything you are. You can't be anything you want to be, but you can be everything you are. I think that's very powerful. I will leave you with that thought. And I thank you for this opportunity to be part of this global DEI conference. Thank you for Stelios and for Glenn for helping me to be part of these minutes with you today.
Thank you, Greg. Great job. Great presentation. Great talk.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Hey, you brought me back to like my youth. I was a paper boy too. That was my
Wow.
That was my first job. I used to get up at 5 in the morning and do the daily news.
Wow.
Daily news route. And, it teaches you a lot. Even jobs at that age teach you a lot about people, right?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely.
Back then you had to collect, right? You had to go to doors on the end of the week and knock and say, hey, I need $1.10. Right?
That's absolutely right, Glenn. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Try to work our way through it. It's funny with the bank teller job too, about balancing the cash drawer. Boy, it's just we had similar types of jobs growing up. I used to work at a retail store, Gertz, if you remember Gertz from.
I'm not familiar with that name.
And I had I worked in a bunch of departments, but the department I didn't like, the one I disliked the most was the candy department. 2 reasons. One, the cash drawer was almost impossible to count because it would be about $800 of dollar bills. And you could never get an early count because guess what? It was the last thing people did before they went to their car. Oh, give me 3 clusters.
That's true. Oh gosh. Yeah.
And you could never get it out fast enough. Hey, what an impressive book and some great lessons from that. On the and congratulations on your own book editing and co-editing.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Congratulations on that. When you talk about authenticity and you think about openness and being everything that you are, right? And you talked about not being afraid, right? That's often, you think about, there's a song you always hear in church, "Be not afraid." And if you ever actually look at those types of lyrics, it actually kind of very much supports that openness and always keeping your head held high. And there's always we should never be afraid to raise our hand or come back and say, this is what I'm about, right? This is who I am. And look, I'm doing the work. I'm doing the job. I'm part of you as you go.
Yes.
That's an important piece, I think, of inclusion. I like what you said about job crafting, because sometimes people will just come back and say, oh, this isn't me, let me cut and run. As opposed to sometimes, you come back and say, a big organization and there's lots of opportunities. Is there a way to tweak what I'm doing? Because you may be terrific at what you do, and all of a sudden it's like, why should I give this up? Right? Let me craft a potentially new position. I thought that was very, very important.
Thank you.
And a great life lesson too on the everyday gratitude. How often do you catch yourself? Sometimes when you're sitting there and oh, what a crappy day I'm having. Do you ever come back and say, hey, wait a minute, Greg? Wait a minute. Where's your everyday gratitude?
Yep.
What am I? Do you ever catch yourself? I mean, human nature being what it is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A great place is on the subway home. And if it's crowded and lots of tourists and I'm tired, I'm just like, can I pause? And if I'm particularly feeling very, great and like sort of like Mother Teresa like, then I might actually say, oh, you know what? That tourist family, they'll probably have a great time. They've never been here. The kids are excited to see all these buildings. That really takes some patience and gratitude. And I've had a few of those moments in my life, but it's a process. It's a continuum, and I think that's what I've learned. We don't need to be perfect, but just try to uh, include some of these tips and these resources and these learnings in our journey.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you also for sharing those photos. Those were very
Thank you.
touching, very personal. I've been down to your office for different functions. I've been on that porch that overlooks the
Yes, it's great.
Great. It's a great spot. And inside baseball for everybody listening, Greg is actually near probably one of the more iconic trees in New York. In fact, the oldest tree over beating Rockefeller Center, the one down by the New York Stock Exchange. So you've got
Yes.
you're on the good side of town there for
Yes.
as we go. Greg, on your corporate job here, as you look at working through the organization and being part of the employee resource group, how have you seen that group evolve over time? Do you see it taking on larger projects, smaller projects? Do you find yourself as at a seat at the table with management as part of that employee resource group?
Absolutely. Yes to all those things, Glenn. In fact, there's recent surveys that show that when companies do like employee engagement surveys, that those employees that are involved in employee resource groups, they have a higher score for employee engagement than those that are not. They are more likely to contribute sort of above and beyond to the company. They're more apt to bridge between the company, its products, its services to the to other communities, other demographics, and they they are absolutely able to sort of help translate for some of the leaders the information that they need to hear. So yes, for my own journey, being part of employee resource groups has definitely given me a place at the table. And by the way, you still need to do your regular job. It's not like I can say, well, I'm the leader of Prism, so I can sort of slack off at my compliance job. No, fortunately, the executive sponsor of our group is a chief compliance officer, so we're sort of aligned that way. But yes, it gets you a seat. It gets you to sort of to weigh in on projects, opportunities, and it really helps to build the business and to help them to address areas, opportunities, clients, patients, members, customers that your senior leadership team, they're limited. They can't reach everybody. They're not going to be able to get the perspective. And so there may be particular demographic, whether it be Black consumers, Latinx, women, et cetera, that the employee resource groups can feed back to leaders and say, here's part of the marketplace that you've missed, or this messaging, this campaign is like fall is not resonating with this demographic for these reasons. If you make these slight tweaks, if you if you have a community event targeting this population, you'll really gain consumer buy-in and input. And so those are all great examples of how employee resource groups are important, and employees should get involved if they're interested in that. And it's a great way for professional development, for community connection, all kinds of great stuff.
Engagement is incredibly important. I always found on my own side, being able to participate in groups like that, or any kind of, whether it's a task force or something like that, I always found that it made me better at my regular job, because I really appreciated the confidence that the company said, hey, you know what, we really would like you to maybe be part of this. And that just made me feel, you know what, there's that trust, there's that sense of belonging. Wow, I'm gonna when I get back to my office and do my regular stuff, I'm gonna do it even better and work even harder, recognizing the appreciation from that other responsibility given.
I completely agree. That's been my experience as well, because it allows, that's another part of me that I can contribute to my job, and that's sort of what gets me excited and gets the juices flowing and just really gets me excited. So that flows over into my regular work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, Greg, thank you for joining us today. Great talk, great set of slides. Really appreciate you sharing your journey with us. Thanks for all of your outstanding observations and some
Thank
great,
you.
great framework and tips for our audience here today.
Thank
All
you.
right.
It's great to be here.
See you next time, everybody. Greg Ryder from Emblem Health. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.